Hello, this is Mark Nelson. What you're about to see is a series of concept drawings and a little demonstration on how I build my concept drawings for my comic book Thunder Hunters. This exercise using line will deal with line direction, line spacing, and then our friend line variation. So let's get started with just a simple little exercise. And this is actually quite a bit of fun. I enjoy doing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a Micron here, which gives us a line that will be equal. And then what we're going to do is, keeping our spacing between the line the same, try to create, with line direction, movements along the box. So let us be really a little more limited and say we must follow this axis or that axis. So if we come in, and I'll just make this easy for me, let's just do this. So if we follow this axis, and we come in and we keep our spacing very equal, and we come in and we're going to do something like that. Now we follow this axis, again keeping our line spacing equal, and you can see what's starting to happen. Okay, then let's follow this axis here. There we go. Now, you can see very simply that your eye is going across this plane this way, it's dropping down this plane, and it's going across that plane that way. Now, this exercise can help you in a couple different ways. One, can help you just working on your line, dealing with that kind of thing. And two, it can also just help you getting used to starting and stopping on an incline on a line here. So let's just change the direction here. And I'm just going to draw a little slower. And you can see that I might have more control there. So what's going to start to happen is you can see that I'm starting and stopping. I don't have the little foot things hanging out here, okay? So since we did that one that way, let's come in here and let's do a long version this way. And once again, when I do some things, it's not a race in how fast you can do it. It's just developing that eye-hand control. So now we have that. So you can see the box is moving up and we're moving across this way. So let's just change the direction and do this. So once again, we are following that plane, and it causes your eye to follow that movement. Okay, so here we go. So you can see both those boxes look very different. So sometimes it's a nice little thing that you can play with buildings later on or more complex shapes. But right now, just to understand a little bit of this, it's a lot easier and nicer just to deal with a simple shape. Okay, so now let's do something here where we play with our line spacing. Now what that can do is create value. So let's talk about that. So if there was a light source coming down from here, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 3 being the darkest. So what we can do there is let's start with the dark side. So if I come in and I keep my spacing very close together, even though my line is equal, I can come in, and by letting this be very close together, now I can do one even closer, but let's just play with this. So this is the dark side, so that's value in a sense in our 1, 2, 3 is going to be our third and darkest value. Okay, now let's come here and move the spacing a little further apart and do the next side. There, and then let's just do a little bit wider spacing here. And now you can see we have 3 distinct values. So that's what's kind of fun. Now, keeping the line weight the same in these two, but then the spacing is equal, you're going to get more of a same value gray, but your eye will move that way. Now that the line spacing is varying and doing that kind of a thing, you're creating values. So now that we've created one box with value here, let's just create another one and do the same thing. But, okay, let's come in here now, and what we're going to do is we'll follow the long axis on this side. And we will put these strokes very close together once again. And you can see we've created the dark side once again. Now let's create this side here. And you can see once again you have two values, but your eye is moving differently along this box. So this is the thing to think about, is that how you can change the whole movement of your eye by the direction of your line. And this is a great little project. Now, just to show you that this really does stay on the form. So sometimes when you start playing with strokes that maybe move in a little different way like this, it'll sort of stay on the form. That will stay because it's following a flat there, but it breaks up the form in a different way. So that's something that you can play with a little later on. I try to limit myself a little bit just so that I can try some very simple things and then add complexity and build from that. So when I'm talking about following form, and we did this little guy here, so if you sit down and you start looking at, if I come in, you know, creating a 45 will also stay sometimes on the form, but you see that's a very different linear movement. And if I'm kind of doing the opposite thing here, and then if you do something like this, or you just come in and you're moving around, now that kind of creates an up and down. So if I actually came in here and did this and created a little darker side in here by coming in and taking a line, that linear movement is a great movement to describe a hole in that box, isn't it? And these get a little bit more confusing. This becomes a little bit cleaner as far as a movement. So that's why I kept these things really simple, you know, but again, this can work depending on, like you just saw, I could make that work by doing that. So again, every rule that you come up with, you can break. Every time you break it, you find new ways of playing with things. But sometimes, like I said, this is a very sort of simple, tried and true way of doing it. Okay, so let's play with line variation. So doing the same thing that we started before, having a light source coming here, what we can just simply do is come in and just through the weight of our line, start to retrace. I'm retracing that. And you can see already, I can create the feeling of a dark side by the thickness of that line. Now, doing a pen also is going to give you a lot more variation as far as the thick and thin. So coming in here, let's play with the whole attitude that as I come across here, I can really play with a much thicker line. Now I can do a double trace like this. You can sometimes come in and just push it down and get it. So whatever you feel kind of comfortable with, it's kind of nice to play with a pen and see how you can create different kind of marks. So sometimes if you want to leave a little white space in there, it's going to create a different kind of feel for your dark. You know, so this is all things you sort of think about while you're playing within the so-called limitations. And I've always looked at it very simply. When you think about math, you come in and 1, 2, 3 in brackets is a finite set. And once you look at that finite set, you can find infinity within that because you have 1.1, 1.111, 1.11111, and so on. So sometimes it's good to limit yourself and see what's going to happen. So you can see already how heavy that dark side is looking. So now if I come in and I just push down a little bit, and play with the characteristic that this line could be just a wee bit thicker. Then up at the top, let's just let the lightness of the pen carry that. And you can see the difference between the value range that you're starting to get with that nice heavy dark line versus a light line versus a medium type of line. So these are things you can just sit and play with. So if I was to come in and I was to say, okay, I want to make my first value, you know, the light value first, you could say, okay, that gives me that. Now with the second value, I can come in and by pushing just a little bit on the pen, on the Crowquill, you can see I can thicken that line up just a wee bit, and it's already giving me the next value. Which, you know, again for the dark, oops, I get to make the same thing, but yeah, it might not be bad, because what you can see then is the difference between a short dark side and a long medium side versus a short medium side. So if I come in and I want to be a little more careful, I can make these a little bit closer together, making that white in between a little bit smaller. Because, you know, again, you can always come back and make things a little bit tighter if you want. That might be a little bit, oops, close, but, and let's just keep moving along. So again, if you want it real clean, you can come in and you can clean all that up, or you can sometimes let the blacks have a different kind of feel because you have that. I can still come back in and I can push a darker edge along here, and you can see that's not going to fight with the form. If I want to make that edge taper out a little bit, I can do that. So we go from a dark to a light, and you can start to see you have all these things you can start to play with. Now again, you can see here we've got the same movement in the dark, but look at the difference between going up and down and going in a shorter movement. So let's just play a little bit here. And since we have some little objects here that I just drew on, let's come in here and ask ourselves what we can do. So we'll keep the same light source. So up here, I'm gonna, since we've done that, I will start with a simple little light source like this. We will come across here. Now, since I've just drawn a couple lines in here, let's try something here. So I'm going to make a thick line here, and another thick line here, and I'm going to make another thick line here, and another thick line here, and then let's do the same thing right here. In here. Okay, so let's come in here and let's play. So now we've got this. So let's create the darker edge here, the darker side. So we're going to push that maybe a little bit closer, but not. We've got that. That's close in value. But now I can come in here and I can make that one very dark. And then let's come back and let's do that same line there again. So let's follow the dark around in a similar line. So let's come in here and create this dark, make it a little bit tighter by making that a little bit lighter between, as far as the weight of that light line, making it a little bit thinner. Okay, now what we're going to do is we'll pull the black this way. So let's come across this little puppy. Okay, once again, we can clean that edge up by doing a little thicker line. And we come in, and all of a sudden we've got that. Now, let's do this. We'll take this little thing right here, and let's just follow that. And just by doing that, we've now created a light and dark and a little bit of a stripe on there. Now, just to think about a simple other way of making this dark, and I don't really want to get into cross hatching yet, but let's follow the plane here, and if I come in And once again, I follow that plane with a secondary stroke. You can see we really are creating a whole kind of feeling of a light and dark, and it is following that form. Now, the one thing that does sometimes stand out when your line gets really heavy is that that white becomes kind of a zebra, which increases that contrast. So let's come in, and what I'm going to do is just make this a little bit thinner to hopefully drop that back a little bit more. And as we do that, you can see that's starting to drop that back a little bit more on that form. So that just sort of gives you a way you can play. Now, once again, with the whole idea of line variation, you can create so much interesting stuff on a surface with just that whole thing of spacing, that whole thing of line variation, and how you want to use it. So if we come in here and we draw these lines all the same weight, what's going to happen is they all become equal. So once again, since we're sort of universally keeping this our dark side, let's come in here and let's just increase those lines. And already you can kind of see that by doing this, we are creating that dark side and already a feeling for light and dark with just the way the line weight is moving itself and how you can do that. Okay, so let's play again. So let's make this, we'll leave this as a white here, but let's come in, and what we'll do here is we'll follow the form, but let's just play with a line that might wiggle a little bit just to create a different kind of a feeling for that surface, but it's still following the plane. So once again, what we can do is do the same thing, but a little bit darker on this side. So as we do that, we make that line a little bit darker and heavier. And we got that. Then this being the dark side, let's just come in and then what we'll do here is just play with a little bit of that. And what I can do too is I can come in here and make this stand out more by doing what? Let's increase the stroke and the value of the line going around, which means I can come in and I can also increase that, and I can darken this down a little bit. So now you can still see we've got a feeling of a light and a dark, and we haven't really done all that much. So let's keep this little jiggly line just for the hell of it, and let's come in and see what would happen if we kind of follow it that way. And let's do it this way. And why not? Let's contrast against a very straight line. So we come over here and let's make that line a little bit jigglier here. Let's make this a little bit jigglier here. Let's add a thickness, let's add a thickness. And now we won't go quite as dark, but we will move our spacing out a little bit. And if we leave that little bit of white space between the lines, you can kind of see what's happening there. So, and since we've got that jiggle, let's create a little bit of a jiggle here. And now let's do this. Since we have kind of an inlay or a shape that looks like it might have some inlay of boxes, let's create another little feeling maybe for that. And what we can do here, excuse me, is we will just follow the jiggle this way. And then what I'm going to do is make that dark, and I'm just going to come around and play with just sort of the direction of the line a little bit within there, and leave that. I could leave it as a white, and now you can see by still following the form and dealing with line variation, we've created a whole different kind of surface and a texture within that box. So understanding the simple start and how this all works, and then moving it into a more complex thing, always is a little bit easier for you to understand. All right, I hope that helps. You take care. We will talk to you again. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much. I'm Mark Nelson. If you want to see more content like this, leave a comment, click like, hit the subscribe or follow button, and I'll see you next time.